Oh boy, given what happened last week, I'm absolutely making a mistake right now. It is 8:30 p.m. Eastern. There is an hour until the Lakers and Pistons. And last week, when I told y'all I should not be posting podcasts on Sunday because so much basketball happens, within an hour of me posting this podcast, Luke Walton got fired, and LeBron James and Isaiah Stewart. I really should just say Isaiah Stewart wanted to have a bout of Smash Bros. Melee, and I said I wasn't gonna do it, and I did it. So I missed all of that. But we're here now. I've made that adjustment. The podcast now happens on Monday. The podcast will forever happen on Monday. Maybe this will be on Spotify at like midnight or something. But podcast Monday because there's a lot of basketball Sunday. And I dodged that bullet today because Steph had himself a day. Well, either way, I appreciate y'all. This is the third podcast of the season. I'm going to go ahead and get to it. The reason that I am taking this risk of podcasting during the Lakers and Pistons rematch after what happened last week is A, because it's the Lakers and Pistons, and I just don't think we're going to get a great game twice. Watch me eat that. And B, I just can't wait for that game to be over. It'll be like 12 o'clock, and I have so many podcast notes here. I really think I'll get tired and start cutting corners, or I just won't do it at all. And so we're here. But I am going to have Lakers Pistons up on my second screen, so if Isaiah Stewart, I wanted to say Isaiah Thomas, and I said Isaiah Thomas. If Isaiah Stewart puts Braun in a chokehold, you'll be the first to hear it here. Well, either way, this podcast is, well, it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Comes on YouTube last, so if you didn't know that, always check Spotify first. It is also broken into the sections of happy, neutral, unhappy, surprising / interesting, tweets, and G League. That's kind of what I come up with. And hopefully I remember to make the mark on my screen. That way I can get you some time markers in the comment section. That'd be cool. Well, let's go ahead and hop into it, because when I say there's a lot, I mean there's a lot. And you know there's a lot because I am starting off by talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they go under the section of things that make me happy. We'll go ahead and start with that. I believe I started with unhappy last week. I might just mix it up every now and then. But the Timberwolves, man, they have, how do I put it? They have recouped a little bit. They are 10-10, which if you're Minnesota or you pay attention to Minnesota or you're a Minnesota fan, you're happy with 20 games through the season. Especially with what was happening. D'Angelo Russell went out for a few games with an ankle sprain. They started the season looking like, oh, hey, we have the makings of a big three here. And then they started losing after Cat prophesized that part about, oh, we can go on a slide real quick. It looked like they were going on that exact slide. But it ended here with a great showing in Philly, which was Embiid's first game back. Before that, there was another great showing against the Miami Heat, and I just wanted to bring that up because A, they won that game, and B, Edwards had what quite possibly would have been the dunk of the decade. That would happened on the night before Thanksgiving. Don't remember exactly. I was in a hotel watching it. Even on vacation, we still on that grind, you know. And I was on my iPad, and I saw Anthony Edwards just take off from Ja Morant distance. It was those dunks Ja Morant tries to complete but never does, and Edwards completed it. Whether it was a foul or not, I don't care. I don't care. We do not care. Never call those fouls. And I don't know why I'm clapping my hands and talking like there's a ref out there listening and they're going to take it into consideration, because they're going to call it regardless. They got a job to do. They ruined the the Jamal Murray one that happened last year. They will ruin more. It's not the first one they ruin. And I'm going off of memory here, so I'm going to convince myself that it was Gabe Vincent that he dunked on, who then walked away and started clapping because he drew the charge. I don't care. I will choose to remember that dunk how I remember it. And how I remember it is Anthony Edwards, just a madman, an Ant-Man, if you will. But how much can you really talk about a dunk, right? He had one against Yuta Watanabe last year that did count. It just didn't have the crowd with it. I'm sure there will be more Anthony Edwards posters, but until then, I'm hanging on to the memory of this one. But that was a win for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Impressive win against an impressive team, impressive Miami Heat team. And then they go and beat the Philadelphia 76ers. So Joel Embiid's return. Do I have a Sixers? Okay, so I guess I kind of plan to talk about that with the Timberwolves. So first off, yeah, because that also makes me happy. Embiid's return, he dropped 42 points, I believe, and answered all my questions because well, first of all, everything I've heard about his bout with COVID has been terrible. From Doc Rivers, from him, everything they're saying is like, gosh, I didn't know. He said specifically he didn't know if he was going to make it. Like, that boy was struggling. And then he waltzed out with 42 on Cat's forehead. The turnaround, fadeaways, the jumpers in the mid-range, beating him up in the paint. Just typical Embiid stuff. So I'm glad to see, even though he had to just start a season and then go out for a couple of weeks and then come back, he can still be Embiid. That's good, because I'm very high on what this Sixers roster is capable of, given that you got Tyrese Maxey. We talked about him last week, even though he kind of sort of sold this game against Minnesota with that turnover. It almost seemed like he panicked a little bit in that little screen action with Embiid throwing that very predictable pass that pretty much lost him the game. But it happens, right? It happens. He's starting for the first time, getting major minutes, jumping into a lot of expectations, and he's more or less surpassed him up to this point. But very glad to see Embiid is there and is allegedly or apparently going to be giving us those same type of performances. But you got to give Minnesota the credit, because this is one of those wins where you hope anyways that it can help them on the path that it seems that they're going. So if you weren't aware, because there was a lot of basketball going on that night, they were up by about 20 points. The Timberwolves were in this game. And I switched away. Whatever other competitive game was happening, I went ahead and watched that, because I was just saying, oh damn, Embiid's first game back, everything's discombobulated. This is a wash. I don't know if it was 20 points, but it was enough that somehow I felt comfortable turning. And then I tweeted about it, and a bunch of Wolves fans told me, they were like, Dom, it's the Wolves. Because I said I thought the game was over. And the Wolves fandom was like, Dom, the Timberwolves game is never over. So there's that. But they still ended up pulling it out in double OT. And they did it against some pretty dire circumstances. So with about a minute and something remaining, Embiid hit a three-pointer over Cat, little jab step three to put them up 3. And to me, I thought that was probably the dagger. The Sixers fought all that way back. Now they've taken the lead. They're at home. They've got the momentum. It's probably cooked. It's not cooked because D'Angelo Russell has ice in his veins. That's his motto. But he sticks to it. So all the jokes about him still loading and whatnot. As a matter of fact, just to give D loaded, I guess, his clout this year, he is part of what kind of looks like a big three. He's averaging 19 points a game. But the efficiency is not great. But that game was great. So let me give him the clout that fits my agenda. Transparency, folks. Yeah, that game against Minnesota, he ended up with 35 points. He ended up, oh my gosh, 6 of 10 from 3, and 2 of those were super important, and 1 of them I think were super impossible. So uber impressive. I just said uber impressive. That's wild. Uber impressive because Cat fouled out at the end of regulation, I believe, and if not the end of regulation, a point where it really seemed like, oh damn, there's way too much time left for them to survive this, and they did. They went on to win that game by a couple of points. They're 10-10. They did not keep sliding as I thought they would, like a week or 2 ago when I talked about them. Whenever I did a Minnesota Timberwolves segment, and I basically said I'm on y'all ass about Cat in the next year or so, because we can't keep doing this every season. I am at least hopeful at the moment. And their defense is also something that gives you a sign of hope. So there's something I did mention that's important. Patrick Beverley, who is important to this Wolves team, did not play in this game. He had an abductor strain, but he's brought to the Wolves what you hope Pat Bev brings to any team. And I know there's arguments out there about what he actually does, but I'm not about to repeat the same thing that I've probably said on 2 past podcasts in the last year, is that I would take Pat Bev on my team. As a matter of fact, the lineup of Pat, Jared Vanderbilt, and then the Wolves' big 3. Do I really want to start calling them a big 3? I'm the guy that said we can't just go around calling everything a big 3. For the Wolves' purposes, just compared to the luck that they normally have, we will give them that. We will give, especially because these guys all score 20 plus points a game, and the team absolutely can't win without their contributions. We will call it a big 3 for that. Yeah, so Pat Bev, Jared Vanderbilt, and those 3. That's the one stat graphic I didn't have, but I believe that 5-man lineup is leading in, I want to say, offensive rating and defensive rating. Is that right? Could it be both? Please come through for me, Twitter. Come through for me. I had that 5-man lineup thing bookmarked. I had everything uploaded to Google Drive, and apparently it's not. I have a lot of crazy shit on my Twitter bookmarks that I'm scrolling through right now. If Twitter ever releases the bookmarks, it's over. All right, well, that's a mess. Either way, it's something along those lines. It's something super impressive. It's something that you can work with if you want to have any hope in Minnesota. That 5-man lineup is doing something impressive. Just put it that way. And Jared Vanderbilt, rebounding well, playing great defense. Same thing with McDaniels off the bench. The Minnesota Timberwolves currently sit 11th in defensive rating. If I go back to the previous season, I'm just going to guess it was nowhere near 11th. Nope. They were 28th out of 30 in defensive rating last season. So 20 game sample. It just updated. Oh, you love to see it. Whatever happened in basketball tonight made it so that the Timberwolves are actually now 11th as I refreshed the page. And I opened this page probably 10 minutes ago. So within the last 10 minutes, they've already fallen a slot on the defensive rating. But such is life for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Either way, much more impressive than where they were last year. They've got offensive firepower that they did not have. Now they just need to stay healthy, which obviously the Pat Bev thing doesn't help. But they've got a lineup that clearly has something positive going. We'll basically just be seeing if they can maintain it, because that's kind of been the crux of my interaction with Wolves people on Twitter, who were all in my mentions after, what was that, a 5-game win streak? Which, by the way, had they have beaten the Hornets, it would have been their first 6-game win streak since 2004, when KG was the MVP, when I was in the 4th grade, when the Lakers had what everyone thought was a super team that still went to the finals. So we ain't gonna go through all that right now. Either way, I did find that kind of crazy to have Wolves fans in my mentions that hard. It's like, y'all are doing great, but relax. But anyways, my interaction, that's what I was kind of saying is, hey, when it comes to this squad, they can win a couple and everything can look great, and then they can just slide and you can never hear about them again. However, I will say, just from dabbling in the games that I have, seeing what the defense is, seeing that the players that they have that can fit roles such as Taurean Prince, such as McDaniels, hell, such as Pat. And then you've got clearly defined roles for your quote unquote star players here. You got something good developing. You've got something good developing. And I hope that it continues on this upward trend. Because if you look at the ages, it's kind of weird, right? Anthony Edwards is 20. Cat is 26. And D. Russ is 25. So they're not on the same timeline necessarily. I'm just kind of alluding to what I was talking about last week, where I said we don't have much more of this to do with Cat. It kind of has to get on the upward trajectory and stay there. But we don't have to talk about the future. We just enjoy what Minnesota's doing right now. I recommend Minnesota basketball, which it's been a really long time since I could say that. I believe the last time I could say that was when they had Jimmy Butler, but I was thinking more of the time when they had Ricky Rubio and Kevin Love, and it seemed like they really might be able to build around that and have something there long term. That's for the agenda though. I guess technically it was when they had Jimmy Butler for like 5 minutes. So that's, yeah, there we go. That's my Timberwolves talk. I kind of already mentioned Philly here, and they just gotta, that was Embiid's first game back, so now they just gotta get that unit together, get them on the floor together. We'll watch them more. But I'm excited. I'm excited because they had a slip without him, obviously. Speaking of which, in the standings, just to finish the Timberwolves off, they are tied with the Portland Trail Blazers for 6th right now. And they are actually only 2 games out of 4th. So, again, could go either way. They're also 2.5 games out of 11th. So just take it for what you will. But just to talk about Philly, yeah, so they're also 10-10, but that puts them, wow, yeah, that puts them at 11. So 10-10 is 11th in the East, but it's 7th in the West. Just something to keep an eye on, as the narrative is absolutely shifting around conferences. But yeah, Philly is also only 4 games out of 1st after this drop without Embiid. The conferences are so wild. Let's move on. The Knicks were in my unhappy section last week, but I did want to just discuss the Alec Burks point guard activities that went on last night when he hit multiple important threes as the starting point guard in a win against the Atlanta Hawks. So Burks has been interesting because when I dabble in Knicks games, he's somebody that pops up quite a bit. It really caught my eye because D Rose and Kemba Walker were out. Not gonna talk about any injuries there. I don't need to make a comment. It's better just not say anything. Either way, Burks as a starting point guard for the Knicks scored 23 points. He was 4 of 7 from 3. And it is interesting because also in that same game, what was making me unhappy about the Knicks, amongst many things in last week's podcast, was Julius Randle. And they won that game with him shooting 3 of 14. So 3 of 14 from the field, that's 21%. He only scored 11. Sorry, that's wrong. He scored 8 points and had 11 rebounds. And they won by 9 in a game that they seemed mostly in control of. And this is with Trae Young having a good game, which we're going to get to Trae Young. Really, I should just get to him now, honestly, and cross that off. But maybe we'll come back. Either way, I don't think Alec Burks is long-term a long-term point guard, because I'm only thinking about it since they obviously don't want to start D Rose, and Kemba Walker isn't panning out great for them right now. So I'm wondering, will Tibbs be playing with any of the lineups? But because of what Burks has been able to do off the bench, I'm not sure if they want to make that a long-term thing, and I highly doubt that they will. It's giving you 10 and a half a game right now. His 3-point percentage is great. So it looks like the NBA.com only shows you the last 5, but I was looking over the stuff earlier. Yeah, there we go. He's shooting 45% from 3 this year, which under 4 attempts or 5 attempts, I'm gonna assume that's probably one of the highest in the league for that many attempts. But yeah, you might want that bench production as well. So it'd be interesting to see how the Knicks play that. And I didn't press the screen button when I started talking about the Knicks, so I might have to go back and do some math for that time marker. Whatever. Either way, it'll be interesting to see if they play with that a little bit. I'm not sure how long Kemba Walker is out right now. D Rose, I think I heard it was an ankle, so I'm not sure how long either one of them are out. And Emmanuel quickly did not get the starting nod last night, and then Burks did good, so I wonder if Burks will get the start again. But if they were gonna just straight up do a replacement point guard thing, I kind of think it would go to quickly, and you would keep that Burks production off the bench. But it will be interesting because the Knicks still do have quite a bit to figure out, namely how to get Julius Randle going at a clip close to last year while you have all these other offensive pieces. And specifically with Randle, I went back and reviewed the game tape, just all of his possessions, because that's what I do. And a couple of players like him, I'm keeping an eye on them, and I see something like that happen, like 3 or 14. And it seemed like a lot of tough shots against the Hawks. Didn't have space on many of them. One of them was a straightaway 3 that he just flat out missed. But a lot of them were just tough shots that it kind of felt like he was hitting last year. So, still fascinating. The New York Knicks, as of last night, would be still sitting in... They're sitting in a 7 seed, so barely over 500. Still a ways to go. Still a lot of chances to figure things out. But it'd be interesting to see what they do with the lineup, because I'm not sure if Kemba, especially given his health, or his knees, and what can happen with that situation throughout a year. Not sure if he's going to remain the starting point guard the entire season. So just to keep an eye on that, but I did just find Alec Burks starting point guard. Successful game result. It's a bit interesting. That really should have gone in the interesting section instead of something that made me happy, because I'm still either neutral to down on the Knicks. But happy for Alec Burks, I guess, because he's been around for a minute, so it's good to see him getting a legitimate role in a big market. Let's talk about roles, by the way. Kristaps Porzingis. Can you believe it? I feel like everyone gave up on him because of the playoff performances, and Luka takes these giant steps that are basically putting him at MVP level. And what's missing is I probably just hit the mic. What's missing is his co-star that never quite lives up to his expectations. It's kind of happening this year, sort of. So he's averaging 20 points a game right now. Recently, with Luka out, he's playing well, so I have to get you those game logs. But 45%, he is 32% from 3. So this is why I want to get you his game logs, because it's really like recently from him. So yeah, let's just let's make the agenda work here and go from 7 to 13. Game 7 to 13. So from the 12th of November to now, that will net you 24 points a game, 9 rebounds, 35% from 3, 50% from the field. There we go. There's what I'm looking for. And your results are looking pretty split, but also they were missing Luka for that time. But these are positive things. Obviously, because they've been missing Luka, they are now 10-8, when I believe they were at a point in the season they were actually surprising in record. What was it like? I don't think it was 10-3, because they would have had to lose it. Either way, the record looked nice. Luka went not to looking at nice, but you're getting this Porzingis production. So all of a sudden, you're kind of looking and going, if that remains, hey, maybe when Luka step backs in the playoffs and Luka drives start getting jammed up as the series goes on, look what you've got. You've got your stretch big, who's also doing more than just standing in the corner now, is what I think sticks out. So that was a lot of fun in the Clippers game. That was right before everyone kind of went on vacation, which that was a hood classic, by the way. I hope I have that. Yeah, I'm just going to combine those, because I probably had that in the interesting section. But in that game, Kristaps gives you 30 points, 7 rebounds, plays 40 minutes, by the way, which was the most of the season, because they went into OT or double OT. And that game was a complete insanity. Mavs Clippers was insanity because it looked over. The Clippers went down almost 10, it seemed like, in the last minute and a half. Then something happened, then something else happened, something, Reggie Jackson 3, something, Clippers get possession back, and now Paul George is fading away in the corner contested, or stepping back in the corner contested, and literally beats the buzzer by 1/10 of a second. All that to get to the next period and lose. So I think that was just a single OT game. But it was almost a hard sell. It was definitely one of the most amazing buzzer beaters in recent memory. And I also think that was Luka's first game back as well. So I am excited. I am excited for the potential. I'm really mincing words here just because things have gotten so crazy with Porzingis over the last couple of years that earlier this season I was watching a Mavs game. This couldn't have been more than like 2 weeks ago. And you know, the NBA, if you watch League Pass legally, which I'm sure we all do, right? You watch League Pass, the poll comes up and it was like, will Kristaps Porzingis make an all-star game again in his career? And I was just like, man, I remember when he was on the Knicks and we were talking about him. What was the unicorn? Porzingis, they were calling him. There was so much potential at that point. He was looking like he was next. He was really looking like that old My Career poster they used to have, got next or something. I don't know. I might have just made that up. Yeah, that was Porzingis back then. So to see the question now be, is he ever going to be an all-star? Is he going to make another all-star in the next 5 years? I think was the question, or something like that. That was a reckoning moment. Like, first of all, I'm getting old, because the fact that I've watched this young guy go from a standout rookie to is he going to be good again? Like, man, that type of time has passed already. Anyways, that's exciting for the Mavericks, because coming into this year, I was disappointed. I think it was really the first game. So how disappointed can you be from one game? But yeah, very first game, Porzingis basically shat the bed. 1 of 4 from 3, 4-13 from the field, 11 points. They lost to ATL. It more or less looked like the exact Dallas team that was just bounced in the playoffs by the Clippers. So this could be big. Let's just track his progress. I just gave you his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just gave you the logs from his last 7 games, basically. He's doing great right now. He's shooting it well. He's doing more. He's got an increased load. That's what we all wanted. That's what he wanted. So shout out to, I know how many of y'all actually want a shout out for Coach Jason Kidd, but hey, that was the change that a lot of us said needed to be made when one take in the playoffs was Porzingis just sucks, and the other was, hey, he's not really being given a chance to do much. And now he is, and he's stepping up. So that could change a lot for the Mavericks, especially in a Western Conference that seems to be weakening, because they're 10-8, and they had a much better record than that, but they're 10-8, and that's good enough for 4th right now. So I don't think the MVP is going to anybody except Steph at this particular rate, but the Luka MVP agenda lives in that what, 2 to 3 range as far as seeds, because he's got all the stats, plays such a hand in that team winning. But yeah, at this rate, we'll get to Steph in that, but I don't know. This is kind of what I wanted from the Mavericks last year. Is a strong Porzingis and a good enough Mavericks team for Luka to basically go ahead and take his mantle as the guy who's got next. My last note for the Clippers, by the way, was just that, or the Clippers and Mavs, it's just that those games are destined to be hood classics 8 or 9 times out of 10. Because hopefully you just watched it, or you at least watched the condensed version. When I tell you the game was over, it was over. And then that happened, and it was like, wow, this is just pretty much what we've been watching every time these teams play each other. Except there's no Kawhi now, and if they met in the playoffs this year, they probably wouldn't be. So maybe that's your chance, Dallas. Well, that'll move us on to a team, and I did press the screen button this time, so I'm getting better at it. There'll be markers here, although I haven't used any sound effects yet. A team that needs more clout. I said it last week, but it seems like because they played the Nets, they're getting slightly more. Especially it was a game where KD showed out and they almost came back and won. KD had 39 points, but Phoenix was in control of the game for most of it. I didn't want to just talk about that game though. Last week when I talked about them, I basically talked about a former a Western Conference champion that is winning and nobody cares. So we went through all that. We went through this impending clash with the Warriors and Chris Paul versus Steph. But I think maybe now that we've all seen the Nets game, hopefully I can really drive home just like this team is really damn good. They've won 16 straight games and flying under the radar because you didn't believe in their run, or because I don't know if strength of schedule is a thing that people are using, even though you really shouldn't. Because one thing that I've seen pop up a bit is like, wow, people are really shocked that a team that just went to the finals 4 something months ago is really good. And I think that's what I saw in them playing the Nets. They played the Nets and they looked like a team that has been there before now, which I guess it didn't always feel like that last year, i.e. when they were playing a healthy Lakers in the first round and it started to seem, they fall down 2-1. It started to kind of feel like, yeah, this is exactly what we thought it was, but it really feels like a team that's been there and is confident in themselves, and they've got clearly defined roles. They got better, by the way. Again, these additions of Joel McGee and Shamet, which I also touched on last week, but boy, Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker. Matter of fact, man, this starting 5 is really, really lethal if you just look at what they have. I shouldn't have to break it down because even on Twitch, we watched all the finals games live. But you've got slightly better versions of these role players fitting in between your star guys. So Chris Paul, like I said last week, cutting up, assisting, stealing, controlling the offense, PNR, mid-range, just giving you everything that you expect from Chris Paul. But Devin Booker, aka Devin Cooker. Now, I may have touched on him last week, but I did want to show you what he's done recently, because his overall splits won't necessarily tell the story. You'll only see him shooting. Okay, even those have come up now. Yeah, his last few games have been so good, or his last stretch has been so good that even that's come up. Oh yeah, that's come way up. Shit. My bad, y'all. I just said that like I haven't cursed on this pod. What the fuck am I doing here? Yeah, good grief. No, I'm sorry. His 3-point percentage is so far up. He was shooting 34% last year. He's up to 41 right now on nearly 1 more attempt per game. That's for him. That's a leap. And so his field goal percentage is slowly coming up to 48% last year. It's at 45 now. I think if you would have looked a little bit earlier, you would have only seen it at like 41. So at this point, you don't even have to see just the logs. But if you do go to the logs, I made sure for the agenda that we would look at probably his last 8 games. So if you go from 20 to like 12 12 right here when he had 9 and 23. Yeah, I think this is a good place. Yeah, let's just go ahead and go to game 13. But he's in his last 5, 6, 7, 8. In his last 8 games, he's averaging 26 points, 50% from 3, 50% from the field, 19 field goal attempts per game. And it is beautiful. Not just so this is one where the stats are pretty, but you really need to be watching Devin Booker's game. It is beautiful. In the mid-range, the patience that he's showing right now, he looks so comfortable, so incredibly comfortable. Very comfortable playing next to Chris Paul. This is now his 2nd year with him, which no doubt had to have been an adjustment last year. When you bring in a superstar, top point guard in NBA history, obviously it was a good adjustment. He did well last year, but he just looks incredible against certain teams. Against, hell, every team he's played in the recent, 2 weeks. And it's sizing a player up at the free throw line, using his weight a little bit, like a slight nudge with the shoulder, and just shooting over him. Or it's 2 dribbles to the right, pull up, nothing, it just doesn't touch the rim. It is you hear me pausing, right? Because people get mad when you say, hey, his game looks familiar. But we ain't got to do all that right now. That's it. We don't have to invoke any kind of names, because he's not said guy. Obviously he's not said guy, but I never understood the animosity when you bring up the similarities between a younger player and a retired player, because they grew up watching them. And so obviously they take some of those, well, the real stars who take their craft seriously, take pieces from those games and add it to theirs, and then you see it on the court. It's not even any more complicated than that. It doesn't mean that they're as good as those players. Doesn't mean that they're ever going to be as good as those players. But you can see some of the pieces though. And with Devin Booker, it's not even just this season. You've seen some of the pieces, even if he's not said player. You look at field goals by distance, 10 to 16 feet right now. He is shooting 49% actually. 16 feet to the 3-point line, 47%. It's just, that's his field goal percentage by distance. It's just gorgeous. And it's, should I go there now? I'll get there at the end, because there's a tweet involving the Suns. So just remember that I spoke about Devin Booker and what he's doing right now and how essential he is to this team. And we'll get back to that. Mikal Bridges had 7 steals in this Nets game. And we've seen Mikal Bridges, so we already know how crazy the wingspan is. I don't know why there were certain tweets under that thread that were, it kind of felt like people were discovering his wingspan. I'm like, yeah, he's been like that. But Bridges is not just a 3-and-D player, because I think that's how you often hear him described. He's absolutely, he might be the best wing defender in the NBA. He's got the tools for it. So they will absolutely put him on everybody's best player. He's going to do what he does. Or their second best player, depending on how many players they have, how many of those they have, because, you know, certain squads are built like that. But also, you saw in the Nets game, you saw him hit a fadeaway. You've seen a couple of slashes. So it's not just, hey, sit in the corner and hit some threes and then go play defense sometimes. Mikal Bridges has added something to that game. And so you've got your stars, like I said, you've got your Paul, you've got your Booker, but then you've got these guys that are kind of like that chain in the middle. They're improving a little bit. That's what I see with Bridges right now. Aiden is doing his thing, which is definitely worthy of noting, because the season started with some questionable decision making by management. I made a whole video about the contract situation, and you wondered if that was gonna become an issue this year, where he is kind of he at the same time is playing for a championship in a team that is trying to get back and climb that mountain. He's also trying to make money. He's also trying to make his money, which he's made it clear what he feels that he's worth. And so you wondered if that was going to become an issue. And up to this point, it has not. This is just a team that is flat out winning. And so you got this collision course with the Golden State Warriors, who are also doing a lot of winning. That happens on Tuesday. So that does not just happen on Christmas Day. Which is weird, because I always thought of Christmas Day matchups as the first meeting between teams. Because sometimes it is, especially when it's an East and West squad. But since these are two West squads, I guess it makes sense. That is going to be a big test for both squads, really. Because neither one of them are unproven. The Warriors are not unproven. I talked about that. That's why I jumped on that train very early this season when people were saying, oh, they hadn't played anybody. I was like, we've literally have an era called the Golden Dynasty, which is anytime that there's good players on the team and Steph Curry. So didn't need to see much to believe in that. And they're 18-2, it speaks. And the Suns are better than they were last year. Even JaVale McGee in that Nets game was a legitimate problem for them, because there was times where they just did not have the size down low to deal with it, to deal with the rebounding. There was one play where he grabbed a rebound and just literally kept his hands up the whole time with 2 or 3 Nets players around until he got it back in. And that's just one of those under the radar additions. You hear JaVale McGee to Suns, you're like, oh, JaVale McGee on another team, that's cool. But it's mattered. So the Suns team has been to the finals. They leveled up the roster with some additions. Some of the players have leveled up. They are also, at the moment, 3rd in defensive rating. 5th in offensive rating, 3rd in defensive rating. It's fascinating, man. The story of the season, I mean, what you're seeing on your screen is fascinating, but the story is fascinating too. I posted a picture of Golden State and the Warriors now, and then I posted the 2016 standings, which showed the 73-9 Warriors and the 67-15 Spurs. Because it looks so much like that. It is uncanny. The story of basketball is so crazy sometimes, because this is just like what was happening in 2016. There was a great Spurs team, but they were struggling to get air. They were San Antonio one, and I'm not sure if people were still calling the Spurs boring by that time, but they were really struggling to get air because Golden State was so good. That's kind of what's happening right now. The story at the moment isn't really, damn, the Suns have 16 straight wins. It's that, damn, Klay Thompson's coming back and Golden State is 18-2 and Steph is the MVP. So we'll see what happens. This is definitely this is a big game for both teams, and a Christmas Day will be a big game for both teams. And when you look at the rest of the Western Conference at the moment, it just gets interesting, because after that, Utah, nobody believes in Utah for the playoffs. I think nobody believes that Dallas has a championship roster yet. Kawhi is hurt on the Clippers. Nobody believes in or cares about Portland. Minnesota is not a title team. Memphis, I'll get to them in a minute, but obviously they're not a title team. The Lakers are playing the defense of an AAU team right now, so it just starts to look like the Warriors and Suns are damn near. With health, it starts to feel like they're kind of in a conference of their own at the moment. But then also you do kind of wonder about, what if the Lakers really do mimic the 2013 LA team and they come in 8th, and now Golden State or the Suns has to play LeBron James and AD in the first round? Obviously, if they're as dysfunctional then as they are now, won't be as much of a problem, but you still never want to play LeBron in the first round of the playoffs. I don't care how bad his team looks. Anyways, that's conversations for later. The Suns, just to wrap their section up, absolutely dominated Brooklyn. They almost came back at the end, so the score makes that game look much closer than it was. But James Harden did not have a good game. It was basically KD hitting a lot of tough shots over a tough defense, and it just looked. They looked outclassed. They looked outclassed, which, while Harden is in the slump, they are outclassed when it comes to games like this, which will go ahead and bring me to them. I feel like I had more to say about Phoenix, but if I did, it will come to my mind during the tweet section, because there is something for me to talk about there. We can go ahead and actually, we're gonna wait. I just made that weird noise because I just smashed the absolute living fuck out of my finger on this desk. And I was thinking, the Nets are actually in the unhappy section. We'll save them, because I should have just put James Harden, but really, yeah, the Nets are in the unhappy section. I guess that it'd be more natural to go to Golden State here, because I just did want to point out a stat that they have erased 6. When I took this stat down, the number was at 6. They had erased 6 double-digit deficits throughout this season. So the third quarter, Warriors are back. The Golden State team that can just get it back in blood is back. I just watched. Yeah, let's just go ahead and go into a full Golden State thing, actually. I just watched Steph Curry score 32 or 33 points and decide a game in Los Angeles was over against the Clippers. And I guess he got pissed, man. I was, at a certain point, I was kind of like half watching because of what the way it looked like. It was actually, you know what, we were redoing Thanksgiving is what was happening. But anyways, I had it on my iPad. I saw Steph get mad over something, and next thing I know, the Warriors are up like 20. The game is over. And it didn't conclude with him hitting that three where he ran to the left and stepped back on two people, but that was basically the end. And then he mocked the ref by doing the technical foul sign because he got a tech for complaining about what he thought was a foul. So petty Steph is the best Steph. And hell, 2022 Steph might be the best Steph. He's the MVP right now. He's running away with it. I talked a lot about Golden State in the last two podcasts. I don't really need to do a whole thing on their team. Once again, 18-2 at the time of this recording. Is there a quick way for me to get to them? Yeah, there we go. Not the Clippers. We do care about the Clippers, but Golden State at the moment is first in defense, second in offense. What was the other one? Did I screenshot that one? They're doing something very similar that they've been doing since 2015. Oh yeah, no, something about, I think it's their record actually. I think they've had a record like this 3 times in starting a season. Off the top of my head, I would say 2014, 2015 season, 2015, 2016 season, and now, where they've gotten off to an 18-2 start, or this type of record, I guess, and they've all been without KD. That was what the stat was. It felt kind of petty. I think a Golden State fan posted it. But yeah, I talked about Andrew Wiggins just being an absolute gem for this team. I guess I have to give a shout out to Ball Don't Stop for calling that last year, because before they traded D'Angelo Russell, you can go back and he actually has a tweet that says they needed to trade D'Angelo Russell for Wiggins because he has the tools to fit in the system and flourish, and that's literally what's happening right now. Second leading scorer here. My Wiggins propaganda has absolutely just thrived in this environment. I love it. He's shooting 37% from 3 right now, by the way, and 50% from the field. Playing defense, jumping over your head for rebounds. That's just a reference to one of the angles of the Clippers game today that I might post, where he got a rebound over Zubac and it looked like his hand was at the top of the damn square. But like I said, we don't need to go through all that, like how Gary Payton had 4 or 5 steals in the first half, jumping passing lanes and just being incredible for a guy that could not find a job for the last 4 or 5 years. It's mostly Steph that we discuss, and right now he is on his way to comfortably winning the MVP, which will come into effect in one of the tweets. But he's averaging 28 points a game. Of course, he had to average 32 last year just to keep that team competitive, so his percentages are coming back up, as I said would happen, as we all said would happen. 46% from the field, 41% from 3. And it's all the stuff that you get from Steph. And now he has a floor that actually has to be respected too. So it's similar to super stuff last year, but it's worse because now you can't even really wear him out anymore. It's so bad that Steve Kerr is playing him in garbage time at the end of games where they'll be up 20 and there's 2 minutes left, and that's when he'll take him out. He'll let him just pad a little bit before he takes him out, which is a dangerous game to be playing, especially when you look back at what happened in 2016. But it's vindication for the Warriors. It's vindication for the Warriors if they can do this, because I don't think I talked about it, but Draymond a couple of weeks ago on his own podcast that he does said, "Don't let us win a championship." And I think the gist behind it is people have always talked down on their accomplishments. 2015, you played a hurt team. Then you lost a 3-1 lead when they were healthy, and then you had to call KD. So 17 and 18 don't really count. Oh, and also Steph doesn't have Finals MVP. So those are all the knocks that, even though we have a name for this era called the Golden Dynasty, people still don't fully respect. And so I think Draymond was alluding to the fact that there's just nothing you'll be able to say if they win this time. They haven't had Clay. They even with Clay coming back, nobody thought they were going to start the season this good. Even if we thought they would be better, it wasn't supposed to be this damn good. And it is this damn good. So it's pretty much what Dre is saying is, don't let us get one that you can't say anything about. Because he ain't never going to stop talking. And I know they probably still hurt from 2016 as well. Here I go with this weird ass psychoanalyzing shit, but I mean, it probably is on their mind. Just like 2014 is somehow probably on the Spurs' mind still. Or 2013. I don't think losses like that ever leave you. Tony Parker definitely said, at the beginning of the 2014 season, 2013 was never going to leave him. So I'm just plagiarizing. But yeah, the MVP race, as a matter of fact, what is the MVP race right now? If we went to NBA MVP standings, MVP ladder, I'm just curious about who the other names on there are. Jokic has been hurt, so he can't be that high on it, can he? Even though when he is there. Anyways, why are these all in articles? Are you kidding me, bro? Is there not just a ladder that I can just look at? That would be awesome. If there was just a NBA.com ladder that said 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. All right, there we go. So yeah, Steph Curry is 1, KD is 2. That sounds about right. Jokic, who hasn't played, is still number 3. Then you got Giannis, who is definitely probably going to jump Jokic if he already hasn't, just because he's been out. And now the Bucks are winning again because Chris Middleton is back. We'll be talking about the Bucks in a little bit. Oh, and Chris Paul. Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad to know this information. He is 5th. Because, yeah, that's coming up later. But, okay. Just so 20 games through the season. Okay, so, well, we're about a quarter of the way through. So that's not to be taken lightly. We can keep saying it's early for a while, but that's also not to be taken lightly. If you just took what was happening now and copy and pasted it for the other 3 quarters of the season, he would probably, I don't know if you could win another unanimous one with the basketball KD is playing and the basketball Jokic will be playing, but it'll be a formality. The MVP race will be a formality at this rate because he's got so much going for him. First of all, a lot of people realize Steph is not no bitch on defense. Which is a funny conversation because he's never been a bitch on defense. Forgive me if I mentioned this on last week's podcast, but given that the Nets and Warriors, okay, that's Suns and Warriors, so it was last week. So that means I probably did talk about Steph Curry absolutely clamping Harden on one of those plays. Either way, Curry, I've been one of the advocates. I never argued it hard because I just like, if you aren't watching, you aren't watching. Look, Steph has never really been like a bad defender. He has a small, slight build, but he's always been a smart defender. He's always played lanes well. He's been a good team defender. And so really the only thing you can say is, yeah, he's small. He doesn't have the tools, so he can get beat sometimes. But he's never been a negative defender, though, in the time that I've watched him. And now Golden State is surprised everybody and is streaking, and people are watching them, and they're going, hey, Steph is actually not bad on D. So there's that. He's going to break the 3-point record this year. The Warriors are apparently going to have some crazy record once again, as long as everyone's healthy. Super Steph is activated, so what he's doing more than matches the stats. Yeah, you saw Lowe bring up a space this year of him being better than 2016, which really, I thought last year he was better than 2016 because he didn't even have the space to do what he did last year, and he did it. So I thought he's already had a year better than his 16 year. But yeah, it's just kind of set up to where unless they fall to 2nd or 3rd, I don't think it's gonna go to a Chris Paul. I don't think it's gonna go to a KD because he's dealing with a out of shape Harden and no Kyrie and a team that was built to deal with Kyrie. It's gonna, and Jokic, the Nuggets right now with all the injuries they're having, they're not gonna be able to get high enough in the standings. So if you just copy and paste everything right now, which that's not really how a season works, but again, quarter through, if we get something similar to this, Steph Curry's 3rd MVP is a formality, basically. So we can kind of end the Warriors thing there because they're just excellent every week. Oh, and I'm getting pretty thin on the... No, I'm not. I jumped to the Warriors. That's what happened there. If we were to talk about a Steph Curry disciple, is that the word I'm looking for? Whatever. Trae Young is hooping. So that is in the happy section because he was one of the guys that everyone said was going to be just trash with his with the rule change because he's one of the main perpetrators of that type of activity. Either way, these game logs from his last 12 games are just insane. And if you watch him, it's insane. Every time, first of all, if you just look at the Hawks score box, it seems like this man always has 31 points and double-digit assists every single game. But it's hitting his threes, hitting from the mid-range, going off in pick and roll action. He's just doing Trae Young Eastern Conference run things. And these last 12 games, 31-13, 28-9, 27-6, 30-9, 42-10, 23-6, 36, 31-11. It's crazy consistent. And the Hawks went on a, what was that, 6-game win streak before losing to the Knicks last night, I believe. So they were bound to lose eventually. They didn't play that many good teams, but given that they really had a tough schedule, it was good to take care of the teams that you needed to take care of. And now they're 8th. So they're back above 500. And they're the Eastern Conference, bro. They are 3.5 games out of first. Literally in a week and a half, they could be 4th again. So the East is starting to straighten itself out. Milwaukee Bucks are back in the top 4. They'll have surpassed the Wizards sometime soon, and then the Hawks might supplant themselves in top 4. So it's starting to look kind of regular again. But oh, that's the other thing I wanted to say with Trae Young. It was actually pretty specific. So aside from his game logs, I did want to show that. Yeah, here we go. So 26 points a game right now, 46% from the field, which is, well, 47% from the field, which is his most efficient year from the field at this specific moment. 39% from 3, which is by far his most efficient from 3. Taking 2 more shots a game than he did last year. He's back to his 2020 shot attempts pretty much. And taking around the same amount of 3-pointers. So he's increased his field goal attempts, and he's pretty far increased his efficiency. He's averaging 9 assists. The eye test matches, and the Hawks eventually will probably, again, they had a slow start last year, slow start this year. I would bet on them, because again, I told y'all I never thought that their run was a fluke. It doesn't help that they lost DeAndre Hunter, but especially given the way the East is right now, I think that they'll be closer to a seeding that matches the results of last year's playoffs. So it kind of seems like they're headed in that direction. And Trae Young has had himself a nice run. So that's really what I wanted to say there. I guess the Hawks are just still not that interesting to people because they didn't make major additions this summer. And people assumed with health that there's no way they'll be able to penetrate the East like that again. Because now it's not just the Sixers with shaky Ben Simmons and a Knicks team that you can crash with taking down Julius Randle. Well, they might be worse this year, but they're not really a part of that top 4 conversation right now either. Yeah, now it's the Heat are back, the Nets are healthy, the Bucks are getting healthy, the Bulls seem like they could be serious. So I kind of feel like that's why and especially when they start the season losing, you're like, yeah, whatever is happening in Atlanta. But Trae Young is still Trae Young, despite the fouls. Oh, and there we go. I knew it was at the edge of my tongue. I knew something was missing from that. His free throws are down by 3. That was the big thing there. I was looking at the stats. I was like, what? When I was looking at his line, what really stuck out to me? That's what it was. Shot 9 free throws a game last year. Now he's only shooting 6. But efficiency up, shot attempts up. So he survived the hit the refs put out on him and others. So that's been fun. Okay, that clears me of the Atlanta Hawks for now. We'll see which way it goes. Hopefully it's not some massive slide and all my praise looks dumb in 3 weeks or so. Another young guy I guess we could go to. Before we go to that, now let's go ahead and go to the Bucks, because that's basically kind of where I was going there. Bobby Portis. We're gonna start a dialogue, man. We might have to start a dialogue. The Milwaukee Bucks, first of all, if they beat the Pacers, which, yeah, of course they did. I don't even have to look at that. Played the Pacers tonight. I don't think they've lost a game since Chris Middleton returned. They are now, if this is not updated, they're probably 13-8, honestly. Yep, there we go. So they're 13-8. Chris Middleton came back against the Lakers, I think. So yeah, they're actually streaking. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7-game win streak. There you go. The Middleton effect. Of course, you played the Orlando Magic twice, and then the Pistons. That helps. But also, you're getting a better look. Because I was kind of hesitant to talk about Milwaukee the last couple of weeks. Because why? When no one's there. But Middleton back. Brook Lopez is not back, but Bobby Portis, low-key, kind of taking his job a little bit. And I wonder if it'll work out long term. So I might have mentioned Portis in the line before, but he has stepped into this. This has just been a good year for him, man. I'm talking even back to the finals where he was an X factor. He was the X factor in the closeout game. But now he comes in and he jumps into the starting role. 15 starts so far, or sorry, 11 starts so far, 15 total games. He's averaging 15 points, 9 rebounds. He is shooting 45% from 3 on 5 3-point attempts per game, 48% from the field. So it's giving you the rebounding of a big, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure, yeah, of course they have to use him at center. Yeah, he's using him at center. So Bobby Portis, your 6'10 center. He's scoring, he's giving you the rebounding, and he's stretching the floor, which is absolutely essential for a Giannis center. And one of the big things last year that seemed detrimental to the Bucks was Brook Lopez and drop. Because even if they were doing it because they had to, the personnel and the way that they wanted to run their offense kind of at times made it that they had to, it still seemed like that was going to be the death of them when KD was just absolutely dagging them from the mid-range. Hell, even Trae Young got him in drop. And it was starting to look like, ooh, okay, I know he spreads the floor sometimes, but damn. I wonder if they're going to be able to just go forward with this Bobby Portis thing, though. Because once again, Brook Lopez, 33 years old, back injury. I mentioned that last week. I already told you I'm skeptical with that. And so I'm wondering, do you calm this Bobby Portis thing down and bring him back off the bench and use him as a punch off the bench when Lopez gets back? Or do you kind of say, hey, he's having what I am going to, off the top of my head, say would be a career year. Yeah, this is, high in scoring, high in percentages. He's having a career year. I wonder, because you might not get that Brook Lopez rim protection and the Brook Lopez defense, maybe, but I don't know. I don't know, because that's what they did last year. They used him over Brook. And then that was the closeout game, I believe. That was the closeout strategy, and it worked. And now they've also, this was in the interesting section. I don't know why I put this in the interesting section, and I knew I was gonna, I'll leave it there. Yeah, Bobby Portis. Just wanted to put that out there. The Bucks are, if that's the lineup, they're more or less healthy now. They are more or less pretty much using the team that they will be using going forward. Their lineup against the you won't see their lineup against the Pacers, but okay, same lineup they were using here. Yeah, it's Drew, Grayson Allen, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Bobby Portis. Oh yeah, Rodney Hood came back, by the way, tonight too. So they're just getting healthier and healthier, and Portis is filled in. And now I'm wondering, I'm just wondering, man. I'm just wondering. But I shouldn't have to put a caution label on a defending champion. I do just say they have beaten a bunch of bad teams on this streak, though. Of course, you beat the Lakers, which right now qualifies as a bad team, but and then LeBron didn't play that game. Beat the Thunder, Magic twice, the Pistons, and the Nuggets without Jokic. So nothing crazy impressive, but also, like, again, they won the championship, so take it for what you will. Oh yeah, and the Pacers. The Pacers honestly probably had the most impressive starting five out of all these teams. Maybe. I mean, Lakers technically with Russ and AD is still whatever. Just keep an eye on this. Just remember I talked about this Bobby Portis thing. That's all I wanted to get in your head there. The young guy that I was going to talk about after moving off Trae Young was just gonna shout out Dejounte Murray, because I do so many things and I talk about these basketball topics so many times throughout a week that I don't remember exactly where I said something. So I know I talked about Dejounte Murray, but I don't know if it was on the G League show or the NBA Twitch show or both and the podcast. But either way, even if I didn't, I'm doing it now. Dejounte Murray and the Spurs' future. If I did not mention Dejounte Murray last week, he is more than worthy of a mention, because he once upon a time tore his ACL and he is incredible. I'm just kind of speeding through because I feel like I gave him a mention on the pod already. But he's up to 19 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds, so flirting with the triple-double, which he says he doesn't care about, but I always kind of call cap. When players say they don't care about something that's really cool happening in their career, I call cap. We get it, bro. You worked for this. But you can't, you don't press B for the cocky answer, right? I get it. Either way, maybe he doesn't really care because the Spurs aren't that good of a team. But they did beat the Celtics, and Murray basically closed them out. They were down by a decent margin, and the Celtics looked like they should have won it. And then Murray went off, and he slashed his way to the rim and finished with the wrong hand on the opposite side of the basket. That was 1. Then he like spun in the lane and did a little one-handed fadeaway or something like that, and that was 2. And then he did some kind of combination of those 2 again, and that was 3, and the game was over. And that's just the Dejounte Murray experience this year if you've been missing it. He's awesome. He's awesome to watch, which I understand a lot of people probably aren't doing because it's San Antonio, and San Antonio is not exciting right now. But he is exciting. So I did just want to give him a mention at 5-13. And a team that is probably not going to be in the play-in this year. But you do kind of wonder where the Spurs are going now. Because you just lost DeMar DeRozan. Popovich has to be on his way out in like the next 2 years, I would say. So they'll be going through a coaching change sooner or later. Maybe they won't, but they probably should be. You've got Murray and Keldon Johnson. Keldon Johnson is awesome too, by the way. It's just Dejounte Murray is my favorite. And if I'm going to pay attention to the Spurs, I'm going to pay attention to the lightning rod of the team. So it's Murray, but Keldon's cool too. After that, it's like, yeah, you got a lot of work to do with this squad in the future before it really becomes anything, because the urge that I have to call him Jacob Puddle from Game of Zones right now, I ain't gonna do that man like that. Yeah, actually I am. Jacob Puddle and Derek White and Doug McDermott, that's probably not the team that's gonna get you anywhere in the future. But it is fascinating that they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damn double-digit average scores. That is probably the most San Antonio Spurs thing I've ever seen. So yeah, if you want to dabble in a bad team, I can't call the Minnesota Timberwolves a bad team anymore. So a bad team by record, I would say San Antonio and Dejounte Murray, if you do. Because otherwise, your other options are a team like the Pelicans, who just cleared Zion Williamson for basketball activities. A week after I said y'all season was over and that you shouldn't play him, of course, basketball gods defy me and they clear the man. Now, I want to be clear. I said Zion should not play this season on a foot injury at that weight. So now they cleared him for basketball activities. There's a chance that's going to happen. I don't know what his weight is like. I've not seen him since Shaq and Charles just ruthlessly roasted him on live TV. Should I dabble into that? The Zion weight jokes. Should I dabble in? Not saying not I wouldn't. I'm not stupid. I don't mean making fun of his weight, because that's not the route I'm taking. Because people, I'm just now seeing the sympathy for it, which I'm surprised it took this long given the climate of today. I think this week was the first time I saw somebody finally say, hey, we shouldn't be talking about the man's weight that much. Which, by the way, just want to put the receipts out there. You won't find one weight joke for me because I just don't roll like that. But I guess people just hadn't cared because he's a professional athlete and he gets paid millions to literally at a minimum stay in shape. So I guess that's kind of why they've been so ruthless. But then also you got to kind of be like, all right, it's fair to criticize a professional athletes, especially in their star, when it's supposed to be like the star of a franchise. And there's no way they should be that way. I guess it's fair to have like fair criticism of it. But then also you just kind of remember that there's a human there too, who probably sees that stuff and probably hears it, especially when it's on national TV. But there I will say, and take a different route, like there's got to be somebody that keeps it real with them, right? There's got to be somebody that keeps them real with it and say, you were drafted first overall to this team with the hopes of you turning their franchise around, which obviously is New Orleans. We all know that's not going to happen. You're more than likely going to end up leaving one day, but whatever, that's a different conversation. You drafted with those hopes. Foot injury, it's understandable how some weight gets on. I will say I don't personally understand how it could have gotten as out of hand as it did. Just because it seems like when you have that much money, you can kind of micromanage every single thing that goes into your body. So even if you do get that natural weight bump from a foot injury, or a knee injury, it's like, man, it got really, really bad. And so I hope if they do put him out there, I just hope he's at least like maybe half of what not half the weight he was, but from the weight he gained, I hope he cut that number at least in half. It comes down to something manageable, because I just don't want to see the man get irreversibly hurt. That's basically where I'm going with that, because they've cleared him. The Pels are 5-17. They are pretty far out of the play-in, given that the team in the play-in are the Lakers and the Nuggets and the Wolves and Grizzlies, and then they're a whole 4 or 5 games out of that. So, and you're still probably you're still probably a good amount of time away from a Zion return. So I wouldn't do it, but he's cleared. That's the information I have for you. They did pick up a win against the Jazz on the back of a Devontae Graham game winner. Brandon Ingram, it's been up and down. Also didn't help that Devontae Graham was missing, because that's like one of the people giving you the space on that team to operate, especially when you're not the sole focal point, since JV is also eating, but on the perimeter that can just get tough real quick. So Ingram will up and down. He's just in a tough spot. Louisiana. We talked about that last week. Zion has been cleared, and we may be clear of the happy section. It looks like the last thing I had to talk about here was Damian Lillard, who won Player of the Week. So Lillard is starting to show flashes of his old self. Starting to get to a point where you're seeing some of the logo Lillard shots, the regular Lillard box scores. The scoring is slightly coming up. He's been around like 20 this year. It's up to 22. Field goal percentage compared to what he normally does still is ass. He's not in the clear yet, but Player of the Week, the logs they gave him that, if you take away I'm going to be nice here for the agenda and take away the Golden State game he had, which was just dog shit. If you go from the 10th up to the 24th, gives you averages of 27 points, 8 assists, 40% from 3, 46% from the field. So much more Lillard-like as of recent. That's basically the point there. And then, of course, they played Golden State, so there was no hope. He played Golden State. Steph Curry Steph'd once again. I said it was Steph o'clock in Portland. I probably should have said it was Stephen o'clock, like 7 o'clock. I think that would have probably been the better one. But yeah, like the Lillard and Curry conversation should have never been a thing in the first place, but they especially aren't these days, now that he's taken he regressed so bad to start this season, and Curry is back to winning on top of being super Steph. But I'm sure Lillard will go off for 60 at some point and hit like 3 logo threes, and people will be BR or somebody's gonna post that graphic. Would you rather have Lillard or Steph? It's crazy, the news cycle on these mainstream pages. It's just absolutely nuts. Start, bench, cut. No, fam. We stopped doing that like 5 years ago. Whatever. If it entertains you, whatever. Who am I, right? That's it for the happy section. That is it. We're actually gonna move to the neutral now. Had to get a drink of water. That happy section took me an hour. So in neutral, we have the Kings, because I probably had them in the unhappy section, but guess what they did? They fired Luke Walton. Sounds like such a dick thing to say. A man lost his job, and I'm sitting here like, yeah, that made me happy. No, really, it's the fact that first of all, what's the odds of me having a Kings section in my podcast, but much less right before Luke Walton got fired? And I didn't even mention it. That's the really weird part, is I talked about the Kings last week, but I did not say a word about Luke Walton, because I knew he was on the hot seat, but I just didn't mention it. That's not what I was there to talk about. And he got fired right as the podcast dropped. So once again, that's why we do these on Sundays, because it just Mondays now, because it seems like Sunday is just the day. Oh, speaking of, now the game is on, so I can cut the Lakers on just in case Isaiah Thomas. Oh my goodness, bro, Isaiah Stewart decides to box. So I'll cut that on. I'll keep that on in the background. Either way, oh, that's really distracting to have on during a podcast. The Kings, I doubt it's going to fix their issues. Sure, they won a 3 OT game against the Lakers, which I had to go back and review because I fell asleep by OT. I was getting ready to travel the next morning. I had the game on, but that hotel bed just took me, bro. Either way, the Kings won that game. They fired Luke Walton, which is probably not going to fix their issues. They just lost to a Ja Morantless Grizzlies team by 27, so more Kings things there. I basically talked about last week how that the specific roster they have kind of seemed like it might be hitting its ceiling, and maybe they need to, you know, think about not rebuilding from rebuild just yet, but how much farther they can really go with this. That was basically what I was talking about. And I guess it starts with firing the coach again, but how many coaches have coached in Sacramento now? I don't know. But hey, that's actually a good start, right? I've never heard anything good about Luke Walton as a coach past that, what was that, 7 games or how many ever games he coached in Golden State. And then you go to the Kings where good things just generally don't happen. And then there's a reporter asking Tyrese Halliburton, like a couple of days before he got fired, there's a reporter asking Halliburton basically, hey, do you support your coach? That's crazy. It's like to ask a player that. That's not what he said, but yeah, he if I sum it up, that's basically what he said. Do you support your coach? What do you think he was gonna say, bro? Anyways, if there's one bright spot that also keeps me neutral about the Kings, it's that Richaun Holmes is having probably the most efficient year of his career. It's the second time I made that mistake. It has to be. If you've seen the graphic, it is on Twitter, and he is 80 for 107 at the rim, 74% at the rim. And then that little section be right at the free throw line, but before you get into that key area, he's 24 or 40. That's where he gets off that little push shot that Tyrese sends him. It's like a pick and roll, then Reese passes it to him, and then he does a little floater. I don't even know if you can do that with him in 2K, but it's crazy because it's damn near his signature. So yeah, that's basically it. That all of his damage is done there. Then on the left side, he's 2 of 4. The right side, he's 1 of 2. He's made 1 right corner 3 this year. But he's barely attempted shots anywhere except the rim and that little free throw to key area. That is Richaun Holmes' entire game, and it works. He's a top player for that squad. So that's cool. Firing the coach, for them, cool. Still 2 games out of the play-in, and the play-in is going to be fluctuating between some very interesting teams this year. I've already read you the standings and showed you who's there, but let's assume the Lakers and Nuggets get healthy and move out of that. Then you're still going to be fighting with like Ja, or the Wolves, or Dame, or Paul George. So I don't know. It might be another playoff this year in Sac, and I don't think a coaching change is going to save that. But we'll see, I suppose. Oh, and I had Puke Walton written down here. Everyone else got to it before me, obviously, because I did this podcast a whole week later. But just in the very last game that Luke Walton coaches for Sacramento, a guy throws up on the floor. And just, why, basketball gods? That's so... They're not even concealing their presence anymore. So that's what I have to say about that. Neutral. The Bulls moved out of my happy spot. I don't think that's exactly how I wanted to say that. Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's actually worthy. It's worthy of a sound effect that I cannot do right now, because if I'm watching the basketball game, you guys will hear it. Let me see. If I cut that on... oh, you know what? Maybe you won't hear it. Yeah, okay, you guys won't hear the basketball game. Cool, you just hear the sound effect.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
The Bulls moved into the neutral spot. So very on brand for my luck. Right as I made a video praising them on the main channel, they lost damn near every game this week. Pretty quickly. Now they're 13-8. They won 1 game after, so that was when I made the video, was against the Knicks, and really in that I was just highlighting their team defensive activity, because I was already shocked by their defense this season. But then I watched them shut Julius Randle down in the 4th quarter after he was having a great game, but then they just basically shut him out and won the game through some excellent team defense. And I was like, man, this team is so much better at just defensive activity in general than we thought they were going to be. Then they go on to lose a game to the Pacers, which was like, okay, that kind of seems scheduled. I'm not even gonna lie to you. That was 24 hours after they had to deal with Randall. Didn't have a big man, so that's why they were doing the whole team thing. But then you go and lose to the Houston Rockets, who are now streaking in 2 games. Big things happening there. They lose to the Houston Rockets, and holy hell, Vooch got cooked on a possession and pick and roll. And maybe I'm just picking on Vooch. Do I have drums? I absolutely need drums on my soundboard. Either way, I might be picking on Vooch, but it's just because I think that that's going to matter so much late in the season. So even if he is a solid team defender, and he's been solid at defense throughout the season, I look every time I watch a Bulls game and he's there, I look for the pick and roll action that teams will run. I look at him when he has to play drop. And it's just, man, there are teams with star players that are just going to cook that. But the one that happened in the Rockets game, it was really just miscommunication, I think. But it was also, it just felt like a lack of IQ too on the pick and roll defensive side, because it was Eric Gordon coming off of a screen. And then he just hesitated a little bit. But Vooch seemed to already be getting back, as he thought Caruso was going to take Eric Gordon or stay on Eric Gordon, but Caruso absolutely was in no position to recover. And so it was just a blown assignment, and Eric Gordon got an open layup. I saw a lot of it in the Bulls Heat game as well. Not a ton, because Jimmy Butler attacking Vooch and pick and roll is not really the game plan. That's not really how the Heat operate. They have a bit more to their offense than that. And it's not the playoffs yet, so also, you know, I don't think you're just going to one thing so much. They won the game with more than that, but I did see things that weren't encouraging there. And for the Heat to win that game without Tyler Hero too, that kind of filled in the gaps of what I was trying to say. So the other win, by the way, that the Bulls had was against Orlando Magic, so freebie. But if you remember the Heat segment last week, I kind of got not awkwardly quiet, but I was thinking really hard while I was looking over the pages as well. But I was thinking really hard because I was trying to put my finger on what it was exactly that might make me question the Heat. And I guess it might have been what I would perceive as reliance on Tyler Hero, especially with it being a breakout year. You start to wonder if it's sustainable. But then they go and they win without him. Solid contributions from everybody. Even Bam, who didn't have a huge scoring night, he basically had a Draymond stat line, and they were able to win off that. Butler, contributions from Lowry hitting some damn good threes in the fourth quarter, as well as Gabe Vincent, who I think had 14 fourth quarter points. Some of it wasn't even terrible defense by Chicago. It was just the Heat hitting shots. The last possession was bad. It was just what's his face, Billy Donovan getting out coached though. It was just Spoelstra, and some magnificent coaching by Spoelstra. Kyle Lowry is being shadowed by I think was it Lonzo on the inbound? I don't know. Either way, the rest of the Heat team went to the backcourt, and I think it just confused everybody, because Kyle Lowry just kind of faked to the backcourt and then ran straight towards the goal, and there was no one there. He had an open layup, and Lonzo got so mad, you can tell, because he started running at Westbrook speed. I promise you, it's not a Westbrook stray or slander. That's just what it is. He started running at Westbrook speed. He turned the ball over, as often happens at Westbrook speed, and then that was the end of the Bulls game. So some disappointing losses, but once again, I hope that, I don't know, the newest comments on the last Bulls video I made are probably funny because it's such poor timing. But all I said was that the defense was shattering expectations, which is true, because they were not expected coming into the season to be a good defensive team or to have that good of activity. And Caruso has come in and just injected his defensive prowess into the entire lineup. It seems he's plugged in a lot of the holes that we thought were going to be there, because they're using him on everybody, and then even pushing Kobe White out of action so he doesn't get hunted and pick and roll. That's a real thing that happened on 1 or 2 possessions. He legitimately pushed him away out of the action and sent him to the other side of the floor so he didn't get cooked. Those are just little things. You don't see that with every team or every player. So shout out to Caruso. But I also did say in that video I have them a tier below contending. So I'm glad I didn't go all out and say, oh my God, the Bulls are just crazy. They're going to win the championship this year, first of all. Even if they got at the East, I don't think that's happening. But I also made sure that I didn't overdo it. But the defense is still better than expected, so I stand by that. Disappointing week, though. Even if one of those was a scheduled loss, definitely a bit of a disappointing week. And I hope we get Bulls and Heat in the playoffs. That would make me happy. And now we move into what makes me unhappy. And let me make sure, boy, because if I promise you I will not redo this podcast. If any of this game audio starts getting into the pod, and then it gets recorded and I didn't realize until it was too late, I promise I won't redo this. We'll just go without a pod this week. I don't think NBA.com does that bullshit where they have random ads playing on their website. You don't notice it until it's too late. So I'll just keep it up here so I can see if it happens. Unhappy. All right. Where do we start? The Nets do make me unhappy, and let me tell you why. Brooklyn is an odd case. Because you look at them and you say, on one hand, last week, like, wow, this team is first in the Eastern Conference. And that's strange because when you watch them, you're saying, hey, where's the Harden that we normally get? And then also you're looking at the crater that Kyrie's unvaccinated disappearance has left in the team. But then also they're 14-6 in the first seed. That's one thing. And then KD is also, if not for Steph, would probably be the MVP. But what on earth is this page? Okay. Brooklyn. There we go. Also, I'm looking and saying they really haven't had that many impressive wins this year. Like, what's really their signature win is kind of what I'm looking at. Milwaukee Bucks opening night, L. Their signature win would probably be against Philly, which they barely won. A win is a win, but if you remember watching that game, Philly had it and they just let it go. Hey, Westbrook, did you guys lose this game or did they win it? Like, I don't know. I think Philly lost that game, but whatever. They won that. Okay, call that their signature win. Charlotte, decent team, L. Heat, L. Bulls, L. Golden State, L. Phoenix, L. You got some wins against the Hawks and the Wizards team that, while good, nobody really believes they're like that. If it was Wizards and Nets, the Nets absolutely should win that series. Everything else is just kind of like games that you really probably should win. You probably should beat the Magic and the Pelicans and the Thunder. Hell, I guess the Cavs is an okay win, but none of these are like super impressive though. And on top of that, when you do play these games, like what is Harden looking like in these games where his production actually matters? That's the other thing that often seems underwhelming. So let me just get to Harden real quick. Didn't have a good game against the Suns. I can go ahead and tell you that off rip. And then his log. So yeah, Phoenix played terrible. He even got booed. And I was wondering when that was going to happen to the Lakers. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I was starting to wonder if the Lakers were ever going to get booed this season. But it turned out Harden got booed by his own crowd before that, which is just nuts. The guy who got traded there, and yeah, that's insane. Either way, in his 12-point outing in which he shot 0 of 6 from 3 and 4 of 15, he got booed. When they played against Chicago, he had 14 points. He was 3 of 7 from 3, 4 of 11. When they played against Golden State, he had 24 points, so pretty decent night against Golden State. Yeah, he had a decent night against Golden State, even though that game wasn't really ever like interesting or close. I don't think. When you played against Miami, he had 14 points, 4 of 12. You played against Milwaukee on opening night, 6 of 16. Like, you see what I'm saying? 6 of 16 isn't like the worst thing on here, but see what I'm saying, right? Not only has Harden been trying to get in shape, when he does have a good game, it's like this 36-point game against the Magic. Cool, I guess. This 27-point game against an unhealthy Cleveland team. Cool, I guess. 39 against the Pelicans. Fucking cool, I guess. it's not anything that's super encouraging a quarter into the season. KD is still doing as much as he can. I've seen Blake Griffin has gotten some DNPs. Sometimes LaMarcus Aldridge looks like he's in Portland again, but you can't count on that all year. Patty Mills will come in and do his fair share and hit some threes from the corner. But this team desperately needs the Harden that they traded for, and so far he's had like a streak where we were saying, okay, he's starting to ramp it up a little bit. But damn, I need to see him have a good game against a team that matters, that really matters, a team that they're gonna have to take in the playoffs. I need to see him be somewhat explosive and somewhat Houston Harden. Because without Kyrie, that's what it's gonna take. Otherwise, you are gonna get got by one of these top Eastern teams. And it's not just the Bucks this year that can get them. So, non-impressive wins, Harden. I guess one of the cool things is to have seen Cam Thomas get some rotation minutes. Cam Thomas scored 40 in the G League, and it seems like that was all she wrote there. I'm not sure if he's like one of those tween players where they're using him frequently or not. But I think in this last stretch of games that he's had, he's scored more points than he did in like the whole time he played there. So his average for the season is only 3 points, but that's why we look at actual games and watch games. Yeah, he had 13 against Boston. He had 11 against Cleveland. And so he's just now starting to get some like legitimate minutes too. These are somewhat in this last like 6 games. You see him playing 15 minutes, 24 minutes, 14 minutes. That's up from like the 5 or 4 that he was getting at the beginning of the season. So he showed that he probably don't belong in the G League. They're actually using him. We'll see if he can become a legit rotation piece and actually help. But it was funny though, again, because I have to keep up with the G League. It is funny to watch some differences. Again, scoring explosion in the G. Then he tried this like turnaround fade on I think it was on a break and got absolutely just swatted by, was it Mikhail? Can't remember who got that one. It's kind of similar to watching Saban Lee get his layup absolutely destroyed by Giannis after dunking like Westbrook in the G. Not disrespecting it. I'm just saying it's an experience watching these games like hours from each other. Well then, yeah, I'm not happy with the Nets. First seed, but I'm not really impressed. We'll see though. Unhappy. This one should probably go in the interesting section. Yeah, I actually don't have that many things that made me unhappy this week. Wow. Good, because I've already been talking for an hour and a half. I thought, it's like, damn, if the unhappy section is as long as the happy, I was like, I might have to cut some of this shit out. The Nuggets, man. Unfortunate. Jokic has missed the last group of games. MPJ, we've learned, is possibly going to be out for the season with the back injury. Which is crazy because the layup that he blew that gasket on, I may have mentioned it already. That may have been in last week's pod, but that layup where people were making fun of, yeah, I think I definitely mentioned it. He missed that wide open fast break layup, and we haven't seen him since. People were laughing, and I saw those things like, oh yeah, he had to fake that injury. Like, no, that back that people were worried about in the draft might actually be the thing that keeps him from ever reaching his potential in that super duper expensive contract they just gave him. And then PJ Dozier tears his ACL. And it was one of those ACL tears that you couldn't even question. When it happened, I immediately texted the group. I was like, bruh, PJ Dozier just tore his ACL. And then Asher, shout out resident Nuggets fan Asher, might have seen me interact with him on the timeline before. He DM'd me and he was like, oh, well, the Nuggets said he's questionable to return, but their medical team is incompetent. And so he was questionable to return with an ACL. They did the examination, was like, oh, we might be able to put you back out there. That didn't happen. So, man, the Murray injury already happened. Since Jokic has been gone and he was once again having an MVP season, they're 10th. Just shit luck, because this is how things go in the wrong direction. It's one season, but it's like injuries ruined them last year. Injuries are pretty much taking this year from them completely. this is how you end up. This is how star players end up getting unhappy and blah, blah, blah. But Jokic, yeah, we're not even talking about Jokic and moving anywhere anytime soon. But I hate seeing seasons wasted. And MPJ was supposed to be such a big part of what they were doing. It was supposed to be Jamal and MPJ and Jokic and then support pieces. But we have to see how Murray returns from the ACL, which I think he'll be fine. The amount of ACL injuries I've seen now where people come back fine, Murray will probably be fine. But once again, just last year we were asking, gosh, how did so many teams pass up on MPJ? And this is exactly why they passed up on him. So we'll see what happens, but not a good thing happening with the Nuggets. Before I move to the Lakers, who are currently playing, I guess I'll just say that Gobert's mistake at the end of the Grizzlies game absolutely just ruined my vibe. Because what? They lost the game to the Grizzlies. You're going to get your Jazz segment right here. I guess if I had to say something positive about the Jazz, they got Rudy Gay back off the bench, so that's cool. But they lost to the Grizz the other night, and Gobert got pulled all the way into the paint, but he didn't really get pulled there. Who drove? Was it? It was probably John Morant that drove, but it was from the right side, and it was kind of already. Can I pull this up? This might be the first time I actually do this, pulling up tape on a podcast, just because like this one made me so heated that I actually it was Jaren Jackson's game winner. Jaren Jackson game winner, and here it is. See, look, gotta turn that down because that probably made it into the pod. Yeah, here we go. So check this out. There's a tip, right? John Morant gets it, takes it across the timeline, drives in on Conley. Royce O'Neal is already at the top of the key, not the top of the key. He's already moving out of the restricted area to contest this jaw drive, coming at a million miles an hour. So yes, what Rudy Gobert saw here is he thought that Brandon Clark was going to be open under the paint. But I think Royce O'Neal had that on lock. I don't think Gobert needed to help as hard as he did on this play. As a matter of fact, Royce O'Neal definitely had it on lock. He even jumped in the air. So I get Gobert's intention, but damn, he left Jaren Jackson all the way open. They lost the game. Jazz are 13-7. And I already talked about how, because of everything that's happened in Utah over the last couple of years, nobody really cares about him. But yeah, that one just ruined my whole vibe. I was like, I get the idea of even showing there, but damn. And the Jazz just make me unhappy in general, because I had to call them a dark horse in 2020. Then I had to look at them last year and give them a look, even though I felt like I did not predict them to go to the finals. Absolutely not. So I knew they were going to lose, and they did. And now they were here. They started the season decently, but the roster in my eyes just hasn't changed enough to really move me. And I still wonder how Rudy Gobert is going to fare in the playoffs, even though it's not all his fault, because that has kind of become he's pretty much become the punching bag. Rudy Gobert defending the perimeter has become the punching bag for the Jazz losing. But still, though, that is something that I have to worry about and wonder about. But it doesn't keep me up at night because I don't think about the Jazz that much, and neither do you. So we'll move on to the Lakers, who are currently playing, the last of my unhappy section. They have made it again. Do I have like a sad air horn to play when a team makes it here for a second time? No, we don't. I just have Skip, actually.
I am back. What it do, baby?
The Lakers are back in the unhappy section for many reasons. Oh boy, where do we start? I could start with the defense. I could start with THT going in the other direction. I could start with Anthony Davis. First of all, I guess we'll just start with the Lakers Pistons situation, just because I had to. Because I missed it last week. It's already resolved. Pretty much nobody cares about it. They're playing right now. The Lakers are only up 2, so hopefully I finish this podcast in time to catch some of it, because I'm just kind of snake eyes and get right now. The Los Angeles Lakers and the Pistons got into that scuffle. LeBron was rightfully suspended, even if he didn't mean to hit Isaiah Thomas. Oh my goodness, bro. That is the third time I've done that.
Ain't no way.
I have done that 3 times this podcast. Isaiah Stewart. He clearly meant to hit him, but he missed and hit him in his face and almost caused malice. It's not the Palace anymore, right? I don't care. Anytime something happens in Detroit, it's called malice at the Palace. So we're just going to say it almost caused malice at the Palace too. And Stewart, a lot of people were saying, hey, well, Stewart didn't do anything when he was LeBron's face and he only got mad when people got in between. I kind of think he was getting progressively angrier, and then he realized he was bleeding and that started to make him snap. Because then he displayed his football skills. In case the NBA threw him out for attacking LeBron or attempting an attack on LeBron, he had a football career coming right up because he trucked a good 3 or 4 people in efforts to get to the Lakers. And then he turned around like 3 times after playing it cool. Then he ran into the locker room like he was going to come out the other side of the tunnel. It was just chaos. Either way, him and Braun were thrown out of that game. And the Lakers were probably down by 15 or 20 at some point, which is crazy because if you go back and listen to that podcast, I was saying, oh, LeBron should have a good showing today. Maybe I'm going to miss it on this pod and LeBron's going to have a great showing. No, I actually just missed the malice instead. But yeah, even with the Lakers starting lineup healthy, at least they nearly lost that. By the way, Austin Reeves just checked in. I believe this is his return, so that's very helpful. Yeah, the fact that they were even down in that game. So something positive came of it. The fact that they were able to win it. Westbrook had one of many good games that he's had. Also, go back to the old podcast. I specifically said Westbrook is going to have good games for the Lakers because this is what he does. He has terrible games and he loses games with some decision making, and then he'll just have great moments and you'll think that he's going to take the team to a title. It's a seasonal thing. So he's in like the last week or week and a half, he's actually been a bright spot for them. And he wasn't at Pistons game. He absolutely wasn't at Pistons game. AD turned on his lock takeover at the end to lock Kate Cunningham up. They win, which was a super important win because to lose LeBron in that big scuffle and lose to the Pistons in the same night, I don't know. I think the LA verse might have imploded. So important win there. Even an important win in Indiana. Now, I do want to throw in one more note for the Pistons game. Why was the Lakers and Pistons game close? That's the other thing. Like, yeah, you came back and won it, and you absolutely needed to win it, but why was that game close? So then you get into it with the Pacers, who, again, I reiterated last week, I believe that team is better than their record. The lineup that they have out there, they can give some teams challenges, especially if they actually utilize the bonus. And that one got really interesting. That one got really, really interesting. I'm glad I did not just take a full vacation and not watch any games, because I had that one on in the hotel. I saw the fan interaction, and then I saw LeBron remind everybody that Indiana is one of 3 professional basketball franchises that he owns. He just pulled out what I guess we're calling the silencer now, which is the Bane move. Is that what they're calling the silencer, or what's it when he gripped his balls? No, that's the big ball celebration. Oh, sheesh. Oh, man. So, yeah, I guess it's called the silencer, which it never has been. He hit at least 3 step back LaFuck you threes. That's just what they're called. That will forever be coined the LaFuck you 3. You can always see it coming, and when I get to interview a player that's guarded that, I want to ask them, what do you see on the court versus what we see on TV? Because on TV, you can always see it coming. Maybe it's because we have that top-down perspective and we can see his whole body. Because there's just certain micro things that happen when he takes it. He takes some slow dribbles. I think he goes under the leg at least once. He has a certain posture. Maybe this is all things that you just can't really think about when you're wondering, is a screen going to come or is he going to drive? Maybe you can't think about all this. But on TV, you can always see it. And so everyone he shot against Indiana that night, you saw it coming before it happened. And it eventually came to the tune of, what was that, 39 points and a win. But that wasn't the only thing that happened there. I'll get to the just absolutely rabid fans at the end here, but he also played center. Le Center is what we're calling it. LeBron at the 5. So the Pacers employed 2 bigs, Sabonis, Miles Turner. With LeBron at the 5, Miles Turner actually ended up guarding Westbrook, because I guess that was pretty much the best they could do at that point. And you're comfortable playing and sacking off of Westbrook, so they were happy with that, and Miles Turner is a good defender. But LeBron at the 5 causes problems for teams. Off the top of my head, what was the lineup they were running? It was Westbrook, Monk, I believe Melo, Braun, and maybe Wayne Ellington. And it is fascinating because, well, first of all, we've just watched LeBron play damn near every position. Even if he's never, as I say this, by the way, he just threw a pass that is absolutely going to be on your highlights to Wayne Ellington. It is a point guard level pass, superstar point guard level pass. We've seen him do point guard duties, small forward, power forward. Now we see in center, even though we've kind of seen center before, we're kind of feel like we're starting to become a repeating thing this year. As a matter of fact, LeBron is playing the 5 right now as I'm speaking. The lineup is Westbrook, Ellington, Melo, Reeves, and Braun. So Braun is absolutely the 5 right now. So they're going to it again. The stat will be outdated by the time this podcast comes out, but up to this Pistons game, the LeBron at the 5 lineups had outscored opponents 65-44 in the 21 minutes they've played this season. That was from Lakers Film Room on the 24th of November. It is interesting because you wonder, how much do you use this in the regular season? How much do you want to have to use this with LeBron being 37 years old? It feels like a thing that you pull out, like in the Pacers game, to win it, rather than something that you want to use all the time. But this Lakers team has suffered so many defensive issues, so many lineup issues with trying to space the floor for Westbrook, that it almost seems like something they may have to, I don't know if I want to say lean on, but something they might have to consider leaning on, which I doubt that they want to do. But it works though. Le Center does work. And so by the time the season is over, the only thing we will not have seen him successfully do all the time is shooting guard. That's pretty much it. And even in lineups with Anthony Davis, I imagine there'll be times when you see him at the 5. There'll be certain teams that you see that against. Obviously, if you're going against like a Jokic type big, it's not going to happen. You probably can't get away with that unless you don't have him guarding the Jokic on one end. You know, if you mix it up and have a D guard Jokic, but you still have LeBron playing the 5 on offense, I guess there's a way that you could do that. But keep an eye out for Le Center. It got them that game against Indiana. And then they went and lost to the Kings. And that is where it started the show, because the Kings put 141 points on them. Okay, that's not where it started the show that they have defensive issues, but I think that's where people started to notice it most. There was some egregious mistakes. I.e. the one I made the video on with the miscommunication, which I made a whole video on one play, but it was just because, like, wow. Not how does miscommunication happen, but with as bad as they've been on defense, just how does that specific thing happen? But they lost to the Kings without Harrison Barnes, without Richaun Holmes, so they weren't even having to deal with Richaun Holmes floaters or dunks or Halliburton and Richaun Holmes 2-man game. They didn't have to deal with none of that, and they lost to the Kings, the same Kings team that just lost to the Grizzlies by 27 points. No, that's not how basketball works, matchups and stuff, but still, crazy loss. And so you start to think about this team on defense and you say, hey, back to that conversation I was having earlier. Yeah, no team probably wants to play LeBron in the first round, but also if they're miscommunicating on defense, if they don't have defensive lineups that they can actually throw out, hell, maybe you do. Maybe you don't mind it as much. Because if you're a team like Golden State, your movement and 3-point shooting and ball movement would slice this Lakers team up like something you slice. I don't know. I had way too many slice examples just running through my head. But maybe maybe it doesn't bother you that much because of something like that. They have to tighten up in a big way pretty soon here. Because again, now I'm starting to use the term. We're basically a quarter through the season. So at what game do we stop using the early pass? I don't know. But now with a quarter, starting to say some things are starting to look real. Like the Lakers 29th in opponents points per game. It looks real. 18th in defensive rating. Looks real. And the crazy part, being second in pace, but being 23rd in offensive rating. Did I read that right?
Huh? Bruh.
I just used a bruh sound effect in 2022, 2021 on a podcast.
What the hell was that?
That's wild. That brings cardio memes to life. That brings cardio memes. He was just out here running the Westbrook. I'm just out here running around meme to life. Although in points a game they are 5th, but still though, like, sheesh. Anyways, a lot of problems to fix that are not just Westbrook half court related. Again, he has had good games lately. He's found lanes. He's even hitting. I don't know how many timely threes he's hit lately, but if we want to follow the agenda, I do want to show you his game logs. So for the agenda to fit, you would probably go from like the 10th to the 23rd probably. So Westbrook there at 21, 9 and 8, 47% from the field, 34% from 3. Given the rest of his games, that's a good stretch. That's a decent stretch for Westbrook on the Lakers as they're trying to figure things out, as they're getting healthy. That's the other part. You've got Matt Reeves just came back. THT, he went full speed in the other direction after I made that video last week. For him, I really need the game logs. THT, he came back and LeBron wasn't playing. And I was like, oh, hey, look, they finally got another body back. And he looked really good in like the first 2 games. And boy, since those first 2, since his 25-point game in Milwaukee, he scored 2 points, 8 points, 0 points, and 8 points. 3 of 10, 0 of 8, 4 of 13, 0 of 6. It just looked bad offensively. It's looked bad defensively. It just, I get that podcast. I was like, yeah, THT, it could be a positive. Like I said, they need bodies at this point. But if THT could play like this, and then he threw that, oh my gosh, I almost said he threw it in reverse. That's absolutely not the term that I was looking for there.
Hey, bro, come on now, dog.
So yeah, I don't need to harp on it. Maybe he'll turn it around again. But that happened. And then Anthony Davis. Sheesh. Now, that's a guy that you don't expect. Maybe you expect to hear like, oh, he hasn't been playing that well. We expect more from AD. But listen to this shit. From StatMuse. AD this season, 16.7% on threes, which is the worst in NBA history by any player, with 2+ attempts per game and 20 games played. 38% on mid-range, worst in the NBA by any player with 100 attempts. 33% on jump shots, worst in the NBA by any player with 150 attempts. AD is taking shots that he's made in the past. He is not making shots that he's made in the past. And it's bad timing because it's with the added pressure of, hey, AD, we need you to play the 5 sometimes or more. We need you to finish the game at 5 a lot. We really don't need to be having games out here with Westbrook and Dwight playing significant minutes all the time with Westbrook on the floor. So we need you to be one of the most important floor spreaders, really. And he's not doing that at all. So it's not like other seasons where it's saying, hey, AD's a big that can shoot. He has a really nice touch. And you just use that. Like, they really need it. If they have any hope of a championship, he needs to be one of the best shooting bigs in the league. Right now, he's one of the worst. So that, like THT, just turned around and went full speed. Also, probably not the way I wanted to phrase that. AD's got to do the same, but the other way. That is horrific. And it's kind of thrown into question, of course, because narratives are a part of these things on the internet. It's thrown a lot into question because there's just games that he and Westbrook have played without Braun where it's like, man, if AD is the guy that we've said he was, he's got to be so much better in those situations. He's got to be able to, if LeBron's not there, it's like, all right, I'm number 1 now. I've got to It's on me, and they haven't been able to do that at all so far. So if this has no hope with AD at his current shooting pace. This has no hope at working at a championship level. You don't have the defense going. You don't have one of your stars going. You're trying to fit another star. It's all bad. And then to cap off what was a very below mid Lakers week, you had some dickwads in the front row of the Pacers game talking to LeBron, and he got them thrown out. Now, it's alleged, nobody knows what they actually said. Can't confirm it because it's not on camera, but and I'm wary of trusting a random comment in the YouTube section, but I guess because of that, it went around that they were saying they were wishing home on Bronny, basically. Which, if that was the case, I don't even think this conversation needs to be that long. If that was the case, like, obviously they deserve to be thrown out. They deserve to be thrown out if they were saying anything too out of pocket. Oh, and look at this LeBron at the 5 lineup working against the Pistons. Nice little pick and roll there. Foul could have been an and one. Yeah, if you're at a basketball game, there's one side that's like, oh, they're millionaires and this is heckling and they should be able to deal with it. But there's a certain level to the heckling. This conversation doesn't need to be that long. Don't be a shit person. Like, seriously, you can say, oh, that shot was trash. Kevin Garnett. Do I still have that on my soundboard?
Hell no! Trash ass nigga.
See, that's acceptable. That's depending on your hue. That's acceptable in the front row. But yeah, just out of pocket stuff. You're begging to be thrown out, possibly suspended. So just don't do it. That conversation don't need to even go any further than that. And if they were wishing home on Bronny, they should honestly be like suspended from the arena from a certain amount of time, because that's just fucking weirdo activity. But I guess we'll never know. But it adds to the story. It's just one more chapter in the story of La Pacer. Is that what we call it? La Indy, La Pacer? I don't know what the actual name is. La Fieldhouse? Because after she got thrown out, that's when he proceeded to just terrorize them with the same move that you know is coming. And yeah, he's been doing it to Indy now for 8 years. At 2013, my bad. 2012, 2013, 2014, 2018. So yeah, this is just bad things for Indiana. Let's move on as we start to wrap the show up to surprising and interesting things. Surprising. We heard from John Wall. John Wall wants to play basketball. And we were kind of wondering about this because I saw a tweet that was kind of equating. It was trying to draw some parallel between the Ben Simmons situation and the John Wall situation, except from player to team instead of team to player. No, from team to player instead of player to team. And they were basically saying, oh, well, the Rockets are keeping John Wall at home. Where's the outrage? Obviously, it's not even at all the same situation, or it wasn't, because John Wall it was mutual. He getting paid tons of money. I think it's like $40 million. Doesn't have to actually play, which he probably does. He loves basketball, and now we know he actually does want to play. But understood that his role on this team would not be what he really wanted. They don't have a use for him, so okay, let's try to trade him. By the way, the Taylor and Horton Tucker stat line just came up. First 3 games, 23 points a game. Last 5 games, 5 points a game. Just had to throw that one up in the interesting section. But John Wall. So yeah, now the Rockets are like 2-15 or something, 2-17. And he says, hey, you know what? Y'all can't trade me, so I kind of want to play basketball. It kind of just sitting here aging, and I don't see a trade in the future. And he's right, because where are you going to trade that contract? It's a worse contract than Westbrook's, because at least Westbrook is going to go off for like 2 months and make you think he can carry your team single-handedly to a championship. Wall, on the other hand, still has his speed, can still bend the defense and penetrate and kick, but he's not John Wall from 2015, and he's being paid like John Wall from 2015. So where does that fit on this Houston team that is probably happy that they're doing as bad as they are, but also won't really have anywhere to use him, because as I understand it from the Shams report and the Woj, he was thinking about starting. He was thinking about playing like his contract dictates. I guess that makes some sort of sense. That could also get his value up if he started and he actually put up stats. Maybe some team could stomach a trade out there. Maybe some contender could something like that. But again, I also don't know who. It would have to be through buyout. There's no contender that would be able to swing that. But anyways, by the end of the day, they came to the conclusion that he wasn't going to play. That they can't come to an agreement because he wants to start. The Rockets might accidentally start winning some games if you put him and Christian Wood out there, because Christian Wood definitely, I'm not even gonna make that joke. He played well against the Hornets. And so yeah, you don't want that if you're Houston. And you don't want him being in front of guys that are trying to develop. But now it's interesting, now that he showed the intent to play, now it's kind of like, okay, you're straight up and just not letting the guy play. But also maybe if they could come to an agreement for him to come off the bench. For John, I get it. Being paid $40 million to come off the bench of a team that is tanking, that is not a great look, and also probably won't get him where he wants. And also he knows and thinks he's better than that. So keep an eye out on this situation, because I don't know where it's going to go. If a buyout's not happening, don't know anybody that's taking his contract. I don't even have any, besides a team like the Clippers or something like that, I don't even have many places that he makes sense to help. Yeah. Him wanting to play basketball is interesting, though. I thought he was just going to sit and collect the interest. I already talked about the Clippers-Mavericks game. I guess I should have talked about Reggie Jackson when I spoke about it. I did want to give Goggled Reggie his clout, because if you watched that game, and he's also a big reason, by the way, that the Clippers have been competitive. It's not just Paul George hitting incredibly tough mid-range shots. Reggie has picked his play back up. So he's up to kind of like, excuse me. It's starting to look a little bit like playoff Reggie anyways, at least by the eye test it is. With the crosses, the slashing, sidesteps. Like, man, this is the greatest player of all time. Anyways, if you take his, let's see what fits the agenda here. Was he hurt in that game? That doesn't fit the agenda. Take it back to the 9th. Through the stretch of most of November, he's been averaging 20 points a game. He's giving you 20 points. And the percentages aren't amazing, but you just need another guy to put the ball in the basket, not named PG. Has been helping them win. It's gotten them to run that 5th or 4th seed. There will be no MVPG campaign this year because of Steph. There'll be no serious MVPG campaign, but he's eating, and then Reggie eats. And so the Clippers look decent, and maybe you get Kawhi back. I doubt it, but I did want to give Reggie Jackson an interesting mention. Another interesting mention, the Hornets gave up nearly 150 points to Houston. I think it was 146 to be exact, 147. And they lost that game. Any loss to Houston is a bad loss, even though, again, you got some decent players there. Just when a team is as bad as they've been the entire year, it's crazy because both of them scored in the 140s, I believe. It was just a shootout. And it was wild because when I went back and looked at the footage, I'm not sure how much like terrible defense I saw from Houston as opposed to just incredible shot making. I'm sorry, did I say I'm not sure how much terrible defense I saw from the Hornets. If I didn't say that, that's what I meant to say. I've been talking for a while now. Didn't see that much terrible defense, and Houston was making hella shots. Both teams were making hella shots. It was really like open gym. But in any case, I don't care. Giving up 150 to the Rockets is insane. And losing to the Rockets when you're a competitive team is insane, which is why the Bulls and Hornets, that's a loss you just didn't need to have on your record. But yeah, here we are. DeMarcus Cousins has signed with the Bucks, which is something I could have talked about in the Bucks section, but I definitely wanted to leave some meat on the interesting section. I was just wondering if we were going to see him again, literally like a week ago. I think about him and Isaiah Thomas a lot, mainly because I wondered if you put them as a duo together in China, how many championships would they win? But no, DeMarcus is back. For this Bucks team, I don't know. I'm one. And there goes, by the way, Anthony Davis with his one scary potential injury per game. He'll probably be alright. He made it on the floor yet, but I'm assuming he'll be alright. Yeah, he alright. His face is just red. That's normal. Jesus Christ. DeMarcus Cousins, that makes me wonder if they're thinking like Brook Lopez is going to be out and they need some size. I'm not sure how much defense you're going to get out of Cousins. Definitely not like Brook Lopez level rim protection. I guess at most you're hoping he can stretch the floor, something like he used to when he was a healthy player. I don't think in the opportunities he was given, he shot. He was pretty average shooting with the Clippers and the Lakers. It's nothing close to sharp shooting, but I guess you're hoping. They signed him for a year too, so it's not some 10-day. So if he does get minutes, I guess you're hoping you can get some lineups with Giannis where he sits on the perimeter and maybe does get a 13-point night or a 15-point night because he was able to knock him down. That's really all I can imagine. It's crazy that he's floating around every contending team to exist over the last couple of years on these small deals. And he was once arguably the best center in the league. Don't know if he ever actually had that over some of the guys that were there, but boy, that offensive skill set was something. And so if any of that is left over, that is what they're probably looking to be of use. But we'll see how many minutes he gets, see what kind of clips he knocks those shots down in, and if he's the second big in this rotation, because again, that does make me wonder if it's like just in case Brook Lopez doesn't come back, or if he doesn't come back anywhere near healthy enough. I guess that's kind of what they're looking at. Last thing on the interesting section is Klay Thompson is in the G League. Now, he's not actually going to play. He's just been assigned there. Him and James Wiseman have been assigned there to practice. It looks like that's normally what happens when you're getting close to a return. That's happened for a couple of players this year. Serge Ibaka actually played. And to be honest, well, of course, just me being greedy because I have to do the G League show every week. I would love if Klay Thompson actually played. Hell, even if Wiseman played, I'd be happy. But I kind of think Klay should actually play. Serge Ibaka whipped himself into shape down there. Klay hasn't played since 2019. He hasn't played since pre-Corona. Like a pretty good amount of time before Corona too. He has not played in a really long time, like an actual NBA game. I think getting him down there and getting some reps, just running around and being in front of actual pro or semi-pro players in game settings would be amazing. But getting him some reps so he can get some confidence in those legs too. I kind of wonder if maybe the first time you put him in a game shouldn't be in a real NBA game where he has to maybe stay in front of a Paul George or something on legs that he might not fully trust yet. So I would actually give him some games down there, but we'll see. As for now, I'm going to assume it's just practice. All right, let's do G League and then let's do tweets. G League should come first since we're talking about the G League anyways. Two players just wanted to talk about. Taco Fall, absolutely looking like Shaquille O'Neal down there. I think he's only played 2 games and he's had like a 20-point double-double in both. There's nobody even close to big or strong enough to really contain him, so it makes sense. But it's just fun to watch because there's a lot of Taco fans in the NBA just because he's Taco. And if you want to actually see him play games outside of the last 40 seconds of them, you can watch the G. Plays for the Cleveland Charge. And if you were paying attention to my Twitter account this morning, that's what happened. I was doing my daily morning recap and I came across him posting up, and it literally looks like the scene from Rebound where the big kid with the bowl haircut was down there and he was just like way bigger than anybody. So that's happening. The Taco experience is happening, and one day I will be a coach and I will allow him to post up even if he's not that good at it. I'll do it just because he's 8 feet tall, and there'll be 4 shooters on the perimeter just sitting there, and we're gonna win multiple championships. Also wanted to mention Scoot Henderson. He is a 17-year-old kid, plays for the G League Ignite. He came in and he scored 30-something points in his debut, and it was like a loud 30 too. It wasn't just, oh wow, he had 30. No, it was a loud 30. And A, wanted to bring that up because he's 17 years old, and B, because Rod Strickland, by the way, for those of y'all who were stream regulars, you remember Father Rod? I don't even know if that's what we should have called him. low key, but that's what we did in the sim. Ross Strickland was a killer on the Wizards in that sim, so it's pretty cool that he's actually a part of the show we do. He comes in every week and gives like a diagnostic of something on the G League Ignite team. And last week, the last show we did, he talked about Scoot, and I didn't know who he was. There was no footage of him yet that we could actually use because he hadn't played, and he was just talking about him being a professional scorer. Like, he was just gassing the kid like crazy. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, thanks for the segment. And then everything he said in that interview came true. Like, everything he said in this first game was Scoot. So he might have played a second game by now. I haven't done my recap yet, but the first game was great. So anytime a kid comes in and eats like that, it might be something interesting in his future. All right, there we go. That's what I got to say about the G. I'm not going to struggle my way through a 10-minute segment trying to talk about the intricacies of Alfonso McKinney's game this week. Tweets. I said they were coming, but nothing crazy this week. Actually, some legitimate things. One, Marcus Brownlee. I came across a tweet of his, and I was gonna answer it, but then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna save this for the pod, because he asked, why is Chris Paul not being considered seriously for MVP? Because the Suns are winning, and he's playing great, but you don't even hear his name. So that also just alludes to the facts. Nobody cares about the Suns. I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but up to this point, nobody really cared about the Suns for what they were doing. But I would just also say, like, I think it's people only remember my video talking about the counter MVP theory. It feels like people only bring that out when there's like a serious agenda. It doesn't feel like there's a real agenda to get Chris Paul an MVP. Like, even me last year in the finals, I started to question my desire to see him win a ring after he damn near injured Giannis by pushing him out of the air. So I'm not sure how much love he's gonna get as opposed to some of the guys we see, like LeBron, where Giannis was the clear MVP and then LeBron won a couple games, and then hell, if Corona hadn't happened, that 1 week might have won him the whole award. But I don't think there's a serious agenda for him. He don't have stands like that. I also think there's just no way that in what is not even his best season, he would get it over the guys ahead of him. If the Nuggets ended up with a decent record, you would be able to make a case for Jokic, because he was doing literally everything for that team. As you can see, they're close to nothing without him. You wouldn't be able to give it to him over KD, who was having one of his best seasons off an Achilles and keeping the Nets in that first and second seed. And you damn sure wouldn't be able to give it to him over Steph, who is probably better than he was in 2016 right now, while his team is in front of the Suns. This is the part where I said remember the Devin Booker combo, because even if by the end of this we end up with the Suns first and the Warriors second, I think MVP considerations might start going to Devin Booker at this rate, at the way he's playing. Because if you watch him play, like he really might. He's got an argument to be called the best player on the team, even though we know nothing clicks without Chris Paul. Even with Devin Booker scoring, Paul is, he's the facilitator that makes that work. But yeah, Booker's doing so damn much right now that it's a thing where they would look and say, well, yeah, on the Warriors, the other duties that aren't Steph are being split mainly between Poole and Wiggins right now, and a lot of good role players. It's not like a strong second. It's not like a superstar second or anything, or an all-star second. Hell, even with KD, same thing. Harden is not really Harden at the moment. So it would just be difficult to legitimately think Chris Paul would win it this year. It's pretty much all I'm saying. But he's in the discussion, so Marcus Brownlee, you did get your request. He's 5th on the NBA MVP ladder. Oh, also Giannis too. Didn't even mention him because, once again, like right at just a quarter through the season, we're basically talking about nothing when we're talking about the MVP. But as the Bucks win more, Giannis's Wilt Chamberlain-esque stat lines that have just become boring at this point. If the Bucks ended up first, that he would probably also end up above them with just how much he's doing. There's a lot of guys that are doing more than mostly facilitating. And so Paul can always be in that discussion, but it will not pop enough for him to ever actually win it. That's why you won't get any serious MVP Chris Paul discussions. Second to last, my tweet about the Lakers that I found. I found it because somebody liked it. And it was at the beginning of the season, right before the Lakers signed Rondo. And I basically asked, could you come up with a better team from 1 to 13 than this Lakers team after they signed Rondo? Basically what I was saying is not, are they the best team in history? But talent-wise, can you name a more talented 1 through 13? Because when you LeBron, AD, and Westbrook, if you're just talking about pure talent, that's a really, really strong start. So you got LeBron, Westbrook, then you got Kendrick Nunn, who we still haven't even seen this season, but a lot of offense there. You got Dwight Howard on the backup. Hopefully THT, the better version of him that's not averaging 5 points over the last 5 games. Basically just that's the roster, just person for person. I was like, go down person for person. Carmelo Anthony, I would say you get the question. And even looking back at it, I'm not sure if somebody named a better roster going down the lists. I never said they were actually going to fit. So I'm glad y'all have those receipts. Because at most I thought they were going to be a higher seed because they could out-talent some squads. But I never said this was going to fit at a championship level. I never said I knew that was going to happen. I definitely didn't anticipate them being this bad on defense. And I didn't also anticipate this many injuries so that they can't even put anything together. So yeah, there's some circumstances that's led to them not being this good, but that's not really what the question was anyways. It just looks funny now. I'm not going to delete it. It's one of those that have just aged hilariously. And people will laugh at it in the future if they do end up completely failing because they look so bad, but still, 1 through 13. As far as just talent-wise, which doesn't always result in anything good, there's not that. I still even today, as they're doing so bad, I still don't think there's that many teams. Just like what's his face said, the Robert Lowe looking motherfucker that put this team together. I forgot his name because it's late at night and my head hurts. If you watch like one of the little clips that the LA posted when they had like their first team meeting, he said hey, this is an argument you can make. This is the most talented roster ever assembled, but it doesn't mean anything without mindset. Which really, you should have said it doesn't mean anything without fit and continuity. So yeah, my own tweet made it here. And lastly, why did this lady do this to herself, bro? I'm not even gonna read her because I don't. Anyways, a blue checkmark said, I try so hard not to judge, but it's always very telling when fans refer to team as quote we. The ratio at that time was 251 quote tweets to 65 likes. She doubled down and said, the sooner you realize your favorite team does not care about you, the better. That also had a ratio of 75 quote tweets. Now 75 retweets are probably quote tweets. 31 comments and 23 likes. There's certain things that I don't tweet because even if I think that I'm right, I don't think there's enough characters on Twitter for me to defend. And I don't think it's a hill worth dying on. This especially is not a hill worth dying on because a lot of the times we just put we to simplify the conversation. So you know that it's the team that we support. If I talk about the Celtics, a lot of the times you'll hear me say we. I know I'm not part of the team. Thank God I'm not a part of the 2022 Celtics, but there's no problem with saying we. People only say that when they're getting cooked in an argument. Somebody getting cooked in an argument on the Bird app, and they notice the person said we, be like, motherfucker, you don't play for the team. That means you've lost the argument, sir. So whatever argument she lost that encouraged her to die on this hill, I don't understand it. But some tweets are just better untwote. So is this like the donkey of the day segment? I absolutely have tomatoes to throw at her. There was no reason for it. That's why I'll end the podcast, because I don't even need to say any more than that. If we want to say we go and say we. And we are done here. After 2 hours and 14 minutes, I made it through all my content. We're at halftime with the Lakers and Pistons. This podcast is on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. But it always comes out on Spotify and Apple first. Like this one, I don't know, since I'm so tired, it's probably not gonna come out till morning. There's no reason for me to post it at midnight anyway, so probably be in there morning so y'all can begrudgingly get on the bus back to school after the break and count down the days till Christmas break. Not me though, y'all be safe. I'm gonna just be chilling, honestly. I've done my time in the dungeons. Rate the podcast. How many ever stars you think are appropriate. Hit the like button on the video. And I will see y'all next Monday. By the way, yes, allegedly there will be time markers in the comment section. There'll be generic time markers on the video, and I did place my markers on the actual video itself for me, so I should be able to mark sections and time mark them in the comment section for you. Hopefully that helps. Appreciate you listening. I'll see you next week.